Yes. Okay. So, this is the first time that I have done a video like this in over a year now, because honestly I just kind of forgot that I did it. And now that I'm trying to start this YouTube channel and make it more of a specific type of content that I'm trying to upload, I figured, yeah, it's a good time to get back into it. Of course, as the title suggests, this is me continuing to show you my album collection that I've been building for quite a while now. Since the last time I did one of these videos, I've gotten a significant number of CDs, records, and cassettes that have been added to my collection. So without further ado, let's just get into it, because there's a lot of stuff to cover. First up, we have the self-titled EP from A World in Pictures. These guys are kind of like, they're basically an emo band from Toronto, I think is where they're from. And the reason I have this is because they actually opened for my girlfriend's band. They opened for Aaron's band, No Way Out, at Piranha Bar not too long ago. Well, they didn't open for No Way Out specifically. They actually opened for Fate's Got a Driver, but No Way Out played after them. And honestly, they put on a really good live show. It's not really my kind of music, but it's very, like Aaron said it best at that show. She said that, you know, the ability to emote like that on stage is definitely a skill that not everyone has, and you know, the ability to do that is just really incredible, honestly. So I think they're really good. Again, not my kind of thing, but you know, the guy from their vocalist actually gave me that CD for free. So you know, if by chance you ever watch this, man, thank you. I would really appreciate it. Next up, of course, is the new album from my favorite band, Old Star by Darkthrone. And opinions on this album are kind of mixed from what I gather. Some people think it's way better than Arctic Thunder, and some people think it's not really all that's cracked up to be. I'm more on the middle of the spectrum, I think, because I really liked Arctic Thunder. I thought Arctic Thunder was fucking awesome. But I like Old Star too. I think Old Star is a good follow-up to that. It feels like the band is kind of getting away from their speed metal flirtations on the Underground Resistance and going more for just like an old school blackened traditional heavy metal style, very inspired by Celtic Frost. And yeah, the artwork on this as well, I mean, just look at that. Like, it's so busy, there's so much going on there, it's fucking awesome. I love stuff like that. And of course on the back you have the pictures of Fenris and Nocturnal Culto, the men themselves, in typical Darkthrone fashion. Really like that. And honestly, I think my favorite song on this album is the one they released as a single, The Hardship of the Scots. It's really great, but Outman is a good close second. Next I have Shock Out of Season by Friendship, and this is also not something that is typical of me to own, because it's not something I would listen to, but Friendship is the band that we toured with in Fog Lake in the US for the second leg of our tour. Or sorry, rather the third leg, I should say, because before that we had Smidley, and before that we had Trace Mountains. Not really, like, again, my style of music, but you know, they gave us this copy and I managed to hold on to it because, of course, Aaron, the guy from Fog Lake, never holds on to stuff like that, so I just kind of kept it for myself. Probably not something that I would listen to that much, but the guys in Friendship and girl are very sweet people. They're amazing, and I think they're really great musicians too, even if it's not something I would personally listen to. Next we have just this random fucking mixtape CD from Zero Tolerance magazine. Zero Tolerance is a great magazine, of course, highly recommend it. It's way better than the garbage that Metal Hammer fucking puts out. And honestly, I don't know anything on this CD with the exception of, oh, okay, actually never mind. I was looking at this last night, but it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, so I didn't pay too much attention to it. But there's Black Tusk on here. Black Tusk, fantastic. Rough Magic, who are great. and Ken Mode as well, who are Canadian. So yeah, this is I love when magazines do this kind of thing. When magazines put out these little mixed CDs with bands on it with new music. I'm a sucker for that kind of shit. Next up, we have the debut demo from my girlfriend's band, from Aaron's band, No Way Out. This is the only thing they physically released yet, and of course, it's not even like a true physical release. It's actually just a burned off CD with their name on it and their demo. But you know, I love shit like this kind of rare underground shit that you can't get anywhere else. You got to know the people in the band or go to their shows to get it. I love it. They have 4 songs on here: Forgiving Type, Questions, Stubborn, and Hope, which is a cover of The Descendants. And my favorite song on here is Stubborn. I think Stubborn's one of their catchiest tracks, but Questions is like a 30-second hardcore song, so I'd recommend that one as well. They're actually in the studio recording new stuff at the moment, so keep an eye out, because honestly, I'm not just saying this because it's my girlfriend's band, but I genuinely think that the guys in No Way Out are really good songwriters, and they're working on a new EP right now, so keep an eye out for that. Next we have another album by Darkthrone, Goatlord. And this is one that I feel is a bit split with Darkthrone fans, because this is kind of in their mid-career period where a lot of people thought they were just kind of releasing like generic black metal stuff. And of course, as Darkthrone is my favorite band, I genuinely love every album they've put out, but I will say that Goatlord is one that I'm not as keen on in comparison to some of the others, because after Panzerfaust, they kind of lost me for a bit until Sardonic Wrath, and that's when they started picking me up again, in terms of my fandom anyways. But, you know, that being said, there's still lots of great songs in here. So, next we have another local band. This is black metal, Spectral Wound with Infernal Decadence. Yeah, I love the album art there. It's a still from Macbeth, I think. Really fantastic, really intense, fucking aggressive, evil black metal. I love it. It's kind of part of that new wave of black metal that we're seeing right now, where not like the post black metal stuff, but the new stuff that's more esoteric in a sense. Kind of like I'd compare them to Infernal Coil, which again, another great band. We'll talk about them later. And now I have another local release. There's lots of local releases in this one. This is Pink Cocoon with Alienation. Pink Cocoon, I'm friends with Mark Zola, the guy who this is his, technically it's his one-man project, but I mean, for live shows, of course, he has people that play with him. Really, really, really good stoner rock stuff. Essentially, it's Black Sabbath worship, but I mean, Mark's a great vocalist. He's great at writing riffs, so I'd highly recommend checking out this EP again. It's called Alienation. Next, another local band. Saw these guys open for The Sword back in 2018. Prieur and Landry. I'm not pronouncing that correctly. I'm 100% sure of it because they are Francophone. But they are a stoner rock band, and this was... I got this album actually at their album release show, which they played at Tavern Saint Sacrament, and they put on a fucking kick-ass show. And when I saw them open for The Sword last year, they also put on a kick-ass show. The name of the album, by the way, is Surreal Memories, so I would recommend checking that one out if you like if you like what The Sword has kind of turned into, where they went from this really ultra-heavy, like classic heavy metal band into kind of more of a stoner, just like stoner rock sort of territory with lots of acoustic guitars and stuff thrown in the mix. I recommend Prieur and Landry because that's kind of what they sound like. Next we have a band that I saw last year with Aaron, a classic thrash metal, but unfortunately never really released or never really reached the popularity that they should have. Toxik with Think This, and yeah, these guys, I saw them last year, and we saw Mutank open for them, but it was the first time I'd heard of them, actually, when they came here, and they put on a fucking great show. And then I found out after that they were around for a very, very, very long time, but I guess they just never reached that same level of popularity as, like, obviously the big thrash bands like Anthrax, or even the secondary ones like, you know, Destruction and Creator ever reached. But Toxik is definitely fucking awesome. I'm really happy to actually have this album in my collection because that show was amazing, and I've become way more of a thrasher since then, and it's due in no small part to Erin, of course, because she's a huge thrasher as well, if you couldn't tell already. Next is another local band, some friends of mine actually, Crosstitution with the Metastatic Distortion. Of course, these guys are named after the Bathory song. My friend Lee actually played with them for a really long time, but he unfortunately had to leave the band recently. I don't know if they replaced him because I haven't seen any Crosstitution shows happening in the last, like, 5 or 6 months. So I'm not really sure what the status of the band is at the moment, but their vocalist Fez is a super, super nice guy. I really like him. I really like their music. They put on a fucking awesome show. Like, every time they come out, Fez is wearing, like, this shirt that's covered in fake blood that, according to him, he has never washed. So one time I encountered him and his girlfriend in the bar right after they played a show, and she was telling me how disgusting it was, and I think that that's fucking hilarious. Now we have another local band, and I think, yeah, so this is a black metal band from Montreal. Their name is Nalzer, and I'm not entirely sure if the album is a self-titled or not, because I can't see an album title on here. Oh, never mind. Yes, there is. It's on the side. I'm gonna butcher this because my French sucks. Le Astral. So that's what it's called, and this is very similar actually to what I was talking about earlier with who was it? With Spectral Wound, in that they're like just part of this ultra esoteric, really, really brutal, almost noisy new wave of black metal that's happening. Good album, recommend checking it out. It is on Bandcamp as well. Next we have Black Sheep with their self-titled EP. There's only 3 songs on this. On the Highway, Is It You or Is It Me, and I'll Find You. These are, of course, another local band from Montreal. They're stoner rock. They put on a really good show. I saw them with Dew and Blue and Pink Cocoon once, and I thought that they were good enough that I decided to buy their EP. So I do believe the EP is also available on Bandcamp, so I would recommend checking that out as well. The next 2 albums that I have are by a band that I think is still around, but I'm not entirely sure. I've heard rumors that they're changing their name because of one of their main people leaving and moving away to Toronto, but these guys are also from Montreal. It's the Whiskey Chase with Something Blue, which is a split between them and another local punk band called the Costanzas. And the Whiskey Chase again with I don't know the name of this split actually. I think it might just be called Press Start. As you look at the album art, and it's like, this classic old ass TV with static on it. And it's also a split with another band called Fate, Hope, and Glory. But yeah, like these guys, they are a really, really great band. Like, I'm not huge into punk, but I've become more of a punk since becoming friends with the people in No Way Out. And they used to play with the Whiskey Chase all the time, so I'm not entirely sure what's happening with the band at the moment, but they are really, really talented, really great songwriters. Their songs are incredibly catchy, so if you like 90s skate punk with that kind of pop punk edge, I would highly recommend the Whiskey Chase. Next we have an album that I actually ordered off of Amazon because there's no way in hell I'd ever find this in a local record shop. Estradasphere with Palace of Mirrors. Now these are a band that I would lump in with the avant-garde metal genre, metal scene, I guess, because I got into them at the same time that I got into Stolen Babies and Diablo Swing Orchestra and Unexpect and Aphasia. They kind of have this like, they're mostly instrumental, if I remember correctly, but they add a lot of... Now, I might be completely wrong on this, so don't quote me. I can't remember exactly what region of the world the music comes from. I want to say it's Romani. It might also be Yiddish, but they add that kind of Eastern European folk music into some really, really great riffs. And of course, my favorite song on here is Smell the Mutation. If you want an introduction to what this band sounds like, I recommend that track above all else. It's a fucking great song. There's a really great live video of it actually on YouTube, so check out Smell the Mutation by Estradasphere live on YouTube. Next we have a band that I'm really happy to have seen, Bent Knee, with their album Sceau, and yes, it is actually signed by 4 of the people in the band. The reason I have this is because when I was on tour with Fog Lake, we played, I can't remember what city it was exactly. It wasn't Cleveland. I think it might have been Columbus. In the venue we played, it was a big bowling alley, right? And the bottom of, or the basement was where Fog Lake was playing with the bands that were opening for us. And upstairs in the bigger room, they had Thank You Scientist, which I've gotten into a lot since seeing them. And Bent Knee, along with another band whose name escapes me, I'll put it in the description. So they basically had this big prog rock show happening upstairs, and I was stoked on that. So as soon as I had the chance, as soon as Bent Knee went on, I went in and I watched their whole set. It was fucking awesome. I have some clips of it on my Instagram, I think, and of course I'll put it in my Scene Live Supercut at the end of this year. And I went and bought the CD, and then I was nice enough to, or they were nice enough, sorry, for me to go in and find them at one of the bowling alleys and just talk to them for a few minutes. I got them to sign my album. I didn't get the other 2 people, unfortunately, because we just didn't have time. We had to load out and get back on the road again. But I'm really stoked to have seen them, to have met them, to get them to sign the album. Honestly, it's one of my favorite things in my collection now. Next we have, there's 2 albums on here actually that I bought while on tour, and I believe I bought them in Cleveland. Ah, that's strange. The other album isn't here. One sec. I know I have it, because I didn't lose it. Unless I'm... Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, so I didn't include this in the last video, obviously. I bought these at a record shop / used video game store in Cleveland. Cynic with Kindly Bent to Free Us. Of course, Cynic, classic progressive metal, early stuff progressive death metal, but obviously less death metal influences on their newer material. Kindly Bent to Free Us, great record, highly recommend checking that out. And Cradle of Filth with one of their more lambasted albums, Thornography. But I honestly don't give a fuck what people say. I love Cradle of Filth, and even though people consider this to be like a low point in their career, I still think it's a great album. Songs like Dirge Inferno, Tonight in Flames, Libertina Grim, The Fetus of a New Day Kicking, which is actually one of my favorite Cradle songs of all time. I really do like Thornography, so I don't give a shit if people don't like it. It's one of my favorites, from the band at least. Next we have another band that I saw live here in Montreal. I saw them last year in the fall with Aaron, or maybe it was in the spring, I can't remember. But speaking of Cynic, this is Persefone with Aathma. And I say speaking of Cynic because Paul Masvidal actually has a guest spot on this record. But this is one of my favorite progressive metal albums. When I saw them, I was fucking blown away because, you know, being from a small ass country like Andorra, you never expect to see a band that is so specific in style to emerge from a country with such a small population. But hey, it happened, and they fucking toured here, and it was amazing. So, you know, props to them for doing it. Next we have another local act, Mars on Water with High of 4 O'Clock, their debut physical EP. These guys are kind of like, I want to call them stoner rock, but they're not typically what you'd expect from stoner rock. They're more of like a hard rock vibe with some funk influences, and they kind of do still fall into that stoner rock category. I saw them live only once when they were supposed to open for a Ontario band called Doors and Fours, but unfortunately Doors and Fours never showed up because their van broke down, so it was literally just Mars and Water playing, and they put on a fantastic show. The people on the cover, by the way, this guy right here, Matt, I'm friends with him. He's actually not in the band anymore. They replaced him with another drummer, but they're all still friends, of course. And I think that this is actually a really good EP. My favorite song on it is Funk Sluts. Check that track out, Mars on Water. Next we have another album from a local band that I actually have never seen live. I don't know if they're still active. A very familiar name, probably. Leprosy. I wonder where they got that from. They are death metal with some progressive influences. I found this at a very, very small record shop in the Plateau here in Montreal. I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, but it's really, really small, and they have a lot of local punk and metal mixed in with a lot of other stuff. So if I remember the name of it, I'll put it in another video. But this EP is great. Again, death metal, slight progressive influences, obviously inspired by the one and only Death. Next is Isis with Wavering Radiance, and of course that name may sound familiar because Wavering Radiant is the name of my neo-folk project, totally inspired by this album. It is actually my favorite Isis record. It has my favorite track on there, 20 Minutes, 40 Years, which obviously is one of their most popular songs, but I mean, the most popular song from a band usually becomes the most popular one for a reason. And if you've never seen the music video for 20 Minutes, 40 Years, check that shit out, because it uses, they use feral fluid, which is that kind of weird black fluid that can have its shape altered, if you know what I mean. And they use it to a really stunning effect in that video, so even though Isis is no longer around, unfortunately, because of reasons, as well as the stupid fucking terrorist organization that, you know, they share a name with, at least the people from Isis are still doing stuff, and we'll actually get to something related to that later. But like I mentioned before, this next album is by Infernal Coil, blackened death metal, or just straight up black metal, depending on who you ask. I'm sort of friends with the main guy from this band who actually signed the record. I'm gonna get his name wrong now, and it's gonna be really embarrassing, but I think it's supposed to be Festus. And this is a fucking phenomenal release. It is so unapologetically brutal. Just the atmosphere on it is completely crushing and mesmerizing, and they played here in Montreal at Bar La Ritz, and when they did, they had amps that went up to the ceiling. They were so tall, and they basically draped their entire stage set in dead flowers, and they were wearing not corpse paint, but more like war paint with like just black around the eyes, kind of like I guess what Behemoth does. So yeah, if you've never listened to Infernal Coil before and you like the way that sounds, then yes, fucking check them out because they're amazing. Next we have a gift that was given to me by my lovely girlfriend Erin. It was actually given to her by a dude that was into her at one point, but then according to her ended up turning into, or he always was, a gigantic racist. Not surprising, really. This is a split between Mayhem and Morbid, and it's actually not an official release, I don't think. I think this is actually a bootleg, or not necessarily a bootleg, but a tribute album, because it was released by Warhammer Records. It's called A Tribute to the Black Emperors, and obviously it's a tribute to Dead and Euronymous, the two main guys who ended up dying from Mayhem. There's tracks on here by Morbid, and then tracks in here by Mayhem. So for Morbid we have My Dark Subconscious, Winds of Funeral, From the Dark, and Disgusting Semla. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. And then for Mayhem, it's the classics of The Freezing Moon, Necrolust, and Funeral Fog. So I'm really happy to have this in my collection, whether or not it's legitimate. Thank you so much, Aaron, for getting this for me. You are the best. You are a real gem. Now we have something that is local in regards to Newfoundland. Of course, I've probably mentioned this band before. Allagash with their new album Cryptic Visions, which was given to me as a gift by the guys in the band for repping them so much on Heavy NFLD, and I'm very, very, very happy about that because Cryptic Visions is a fantastic album, but I also consider Allagash to be one of, if not the best band in the heavy music world from Newfoundland. They're one of my favorites. The only ones who I think of that really compare in just like my personal taste from my home province is Dark Era and I almost said Goreforge. Those are the three top bands from Newfoundland, and I'm just really happy that I'm able to promote the guys from Allagash because honestly they deserve it. They're one of the best bands from there. If you haven't heard the new album yet, like what the fuck are you doing? Check that shit out. Stop sleeping on it. Next we have an album by Perturbator, who I've talked about before. This is The Uncanny Valley, of course, and yes, it is a Not Safe for Work album cover, but I don't give a shit. YouTube can kiss my ass. I bought this on a very special night because this was the night that I actually helped Perturbator and his road crew load in to SAT here in Montreal, the venue called SAT. And because I helped load them in, I got paid for the gig, but I also got to watch the show for free, which was fucking awesome. So I've seen Perturbator twice now, and even though I got paid, I still decided to buy this album because, you know, good artists deserve your money. And this is a fucking awesome record as well. I wouldn't be able to tell you the name of my favorite track on here because I'm one of those people that listens to albums and kind of doesn't pay attention to the track titles except for the ones that are, you know, singles and released as music videos. So I know there's a song on here that I really, really, really love, but I cannot for the life of me remember what it's called. Next we have another Canadian band, not local, they're from Ontario, I believe, but classics. Cauldron with In Ruin, and I fucking love this album, it's so good. Cauldron are, in my opinion, one of the best bands in the new wave of traditional heavy metal that's happening right now. I had the pleasure of seeing them live in St. John's a couple years ago, and I actually filmed the live set. It's up on the Heavy NFLD YouTube channel if you want to check it out. But unfortunately, I wasn't into them at the time because I was still very, very, very heavily into the world of black metal, and I wasn't really giving the new wave of traditional heavy metal much attention until the last year or so. But now that I'm really into them, I really hope I get the chance to see them again. The fucking dream tour, I think, that I would love to see is Cauldron with Skullfist and Leatherheart. And speaking of Skullfist, they're actually playing here in Montreal later this year, and if I do not get to go to that show and tickets get sold out, I swear to God, some shit is gonna fucking go down. Next we have another classic record in the world of black metal, I guess. Celtic Frost with Morbid Tales. Of course, and if you don't listen to Celtic Frost, go fuck yourself. But no, seriously, this is legendary album, legendary band. Every band that I love has been heavily influenced by Celtic Frost, and therefore I ended up loving Celtic Frost as well. Actually, Celtic Frost is the reason, very tangentially speaking, of course, that I became an atheist. So, but I'm sure I'll talk about that in a future video at some point. I'll get more into specifics later. Then we have another local band from Montreal, Chemical Way with UF No. These guys are just pure fucking thrash metal, well, maybe with some crossover thrown in there. Friends with one of the guys from the band, Bull Royce, their guitarist. The cool thing about these guys is that their drummer is the one who does most of the vocals. So I know that there's multiple bands that do that, but every time I see it, it is still such an uncommon thing that it's still a novelty. But they kick fucking ass. And if you ever had the chance to see Chemical Way here in Montreal or elsewhere, I'm like, my God, fucking do it, because they will rip your fucking face off. And speaking of them, actually, I have somewhere on here. Yeah, right there. Chemical Way, Beer Police. Fucking love this band. Ugh. Okay, is that gonna fall? It's gonna fall, maybe. Then we have an album that was given to me as a gift, actually, by the guys from Emblem. Because one time I went home to St. John's and they asked me to come over to their place and bring a shirt up to one of their friends here in Montreal. And when they did that, they gave me this CD as, I guess, payment for it. But this is Ezra Brooks with Target. And this is some really good traditional heavy metal, of course, new wave of traditional heavy metal, released, I'm not sure what year it came out, but as you can see on the back here, limited to 666 copies, which is fantastic. Ezra Brooks, really good stuff. Very, very lo-fi, but in that kind of old school way that's cool, not in the new school way of like the shit that I do, where I'm just like a loser recording stuff in my fucking room. But yeah, those are all the CDs that I have purchased here in Montreal since the last video I did in May of 2018. There's only 9 minutes left on the battery life of this camera, so I'm going to try to make it through my cassettes real quick, and then I'm going to do a different video for the vinyls that I've gotten since then, because I have an interesting story about the vinyl that I got. Just 1 second here. Where did I put my cassettes? Ah, here we go. Yeah, there's a lot of these to go through as well, because I got a bunch of these on tour with Fog Lake. First we have Kaileza, sadly a band that is not around anymore, with live at Maida Vale Studios, a BBC recording. Kaileza was one of my favorite bands when I was a teenager. They are part of that sludge metal movement that came out of Georgia with, of course, the big name bands being Mastodon and Baroness, but also smaller bands like Black Tusk. And Kaileza were in that world. Unfortunately, they went on hiatus not too long ago. Well, actually, yeah, it was about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And it's really sad because I wish that I had gotten the chance to see them live before they did that. But recently, Laura Pleasance, the guitarist and one of the vocalists from the band, her husband actually passed away from cancer. So my condolences do go out to Laura and her family for, of course, having to deal with that situation. It is very sad. And maybe one day, maybe Kaileza will come back, but who's to say? Right now, Laura has another project called The Discussion, which I'm really excited to hear. So keep an eye out for that. Next, we have some cassettes from a guy that we actually stayed with on the Fog Lake tour. And for the life of me, I cannot remember his name. So, dude, if you're watching this by some weird fucking chance, I do apologize. But this is a band called Real World. Actually, it's 2 different bands, sorry. Real World, right here, with, it's their self-titled EP. And Spunk, with their album called SSOS. And Real World is more like beatdown and death metal combined, whereas Spunk is just like straight up hardcore. We stayed with the guy from this band in our very last date of tour in Toronto, and it was kind of a fucked up situation actually, but I'll probably talk about that in another video. As we have some albums I actually haven't gotten around to listening to yet, but I bought these at a record shop in Cleveland when we were there on tour, and they're all either local punk bands or bands that came through on tour from other places in the state to the venue that we played at. So first we have a punk band called Attitude Era. I don't know the name of this release. I think it might be self-titled. The name of the record store I got this at was Used Kids Records, by the way. You can see the sticker there. Then we have Earth Bastard with I think, yeah, the name of this is just their demo, basically. But yeah, another, what I assume is probably hardcore punk. And then we have, we go from Earth Bastard to Earth Army with, I think the name of the album is actually It Came From Earth Army, and I'm assuming that it's also hardcore punk. But I picked all these up just because I like to support that kind of underground music, and the fact that these were all like weird, obscure demos that from bands I've never heard of before in some record shop that I'll probably very unlikely get the chance to go to again. You know, I couldn't refuse that. Next we have a little bit of an odd one out. This is Kendra Morris with Babel. And the reason I have this is because I saw her open for That Handsome Devil, which is a very weird, eclectic, like funk rock band, I guess that's what you could call them, who I saw perform last year here in Montreal. And I was blown away by her. Kendra Morris, she has one fucking hell of a set of pipes on her. She's phenomenal as a vocalist, honestly. I was super fucking impressed by her performance. It was very, very funky and a lot of soul to her voice. Of course, she is a soul musician, and it's not a genre that I really listen to all that much, but I was so enamored by her performance that I just had to buy that cassette. Check her out if that sounds like it's something you're into. Next we have another local band, Hellraisers of the Waste by Luger. And Luger, a lot of people watching this video probably have heard of them before. They are a really, really heavy but fast stoner band. They kind of sound like Motorhead but with way more fuzz on the guitar, so that's how I would describe them. If you ever get the chance to go see Luger, go do it, because they put on one hell of a fucking live show. Next we have, of course, my friend's project, the band that I toured with, is Fog Lake with Captain, his most recent album. If you haven't heard it yet, and you're into that kind of lo-fi, indie rock, kind of melancholy singer-songwriter stuff, check that out. It's, if I'm being completely honest, I mean, it's not really my thing, you know, but obviously Aaron is one of my closest friends, so I want to support him in every way that I can. So when he asked me to go on tour, I was like, fuck, of course. I mean, I get to go spend a month on the road with one of my best friends and get to see a country I've never seen before and get the live touring experience for the first time. It was wild. I am going to make a vlog about that, so stay tuned for that. I only have a minute left of battery life, so I should probably make this quick. Next is Nightbreaker with their self-titled EP. Saw these guys perform live at Bar Lesco Griff, and they were really good. They're old school heavy metal. Highly recommended. I might hopefully be playing a show with them someday. I tried to make that like networking thing happen, but you know, you never know how stuff like that's going to turn out. Then we have Pink Cocoon with Alienation again. I bought it both on CD and cassette because I'm just that kind of guy. I'm nice like that, you know. Next we have Destroyer of Light, who I saw perform here in Montreal last year as well. I went to that show by myself, but they were one of the... there was hardly anyone at that show, and it really was disappointing because they put on such a good show. They were so good live. They lit incense before they started playing to really get the vibe going, and it was very ritualistic, you know. They had a very like occult vibe to their live show, even though they weren't wearing like robes or anything. So yeah, that's Destroyer of Light with Hopeless is the name of the album. If you want to check that out, I think they're from Texas, but really, really good if you're into stoner and doom and all that kind of stuff. And there is a huge scene for that here in Montreal, by the way. Obviously, that's why I own so much shit that is from that scene. Then we have Sumac with WFMU. And Sumac is the new band from Aaron Harris, I think his name is. He's the guy from ISIS that I mentioned before. And I saw Sumac at Bar Le Ritz here in Montreal, and it was by far the loudest fucking show I've ever been to in my life. Like, even though Bar Le Ritz is a pretty small venue, I was standing right at the front of the stage, directly in front of their bassist's amp, and his amp was huge. It was like, you know, way fucking tall. and it was so fucking loud that I felt like my bones were being liquefied. And that's what I tell everyone who I talk to about that show, is that I just felt like I was going to be turned to dust, basically, because of how fucking loud and rumbling the bass was. Like, I felt it in my entire body. It was actually like a tiny bit scary, but like in a good way, you know? So if you've never listened to Sumac before, like, definitely check them out, because not only are they great live, but they are very weird and eclectic when it comes to sludge metal. Not weird and eclectic in like the Mastodon or Baroness way, where they have like some progressive influences. I mean like progressive in the sense of like just really, really weird, like syncopated guitar riffs and stuff like that. Very like, I hesitate to say this, but it's almost djenty in a way, but not in like, I don't mean that in a bad way, because like I'm not a huge fan of djent anymore. But if you listen to them, then you'll know what I mean. And lastly, for the cassettes that I bought, this is That Handsome Devil with Drugs and Guns for Everyone. And I bought this at the same show as I bought the Kendra Morris cassette at. I actually haven't listened to this album yet, but That Handsome Devil are a very nostalgic band for me. They're from my, you know, teenage years, because they had one song on Rock Band, Rob the President. Because of that song, I started listening to the album that song is from. I love every single song on that album, and I wish I owned it, but you know, if I can't get that one, then Drugs and Guns for Everyone it's a good second. At least I own something by them, you know, so at least I can say like, hey, I fucking love That Handsome Devil. I have two more albums, and I don't know if I'm going to have time to talk about them, but these are technically not mine. One is With You by Knife Play, and the other is Bedroom Recordings by Euphoria Again. And we actually played with Euphoria Again in Pittsburgh on the Fog Lake tour, which is why I have this. They're actually really good. It's like not typically my stuff, but it's kind of like really ambient, like post-rock is how I would describe it. And I really enjoyed their performance, so you know, I'm happy to, oh Jesus, I'm happy to own this, definitely. And the other thing is Knife Play. I'm honestly not sure who these guys are. I think, yeah, like this technically belongs to Aaron Powell, but you know, he's really bad at holding on to stuff. So maybe one day I'll check this out and then I'll report back on what it actually sounds like. But I have no idea what that is. And that actually does it for all of my cassettes and CDs that I've bought since May of 2018 here in Montreal. Again, I'll do another video for the records. I have a funny story about the records that I own that I will tell in the next video. And of course, I have plenty more CDs and albums and records and cassettes back in Newfoundland that I'll do videos for at some point. I didn't get a chance to do it when I was home for vacation, obviously, because I was spending most of my time, you know, introducing my girlfriend, Erin, to all of the different things in Newfoundland because it was her first time there. But yeah, that does it for this video. Peace out. See you next time.